Welcome to this episode of WW2 Wayfinder, and today, because I'm here in Sainte Me for the 79th anniversary of D-Day, the Airborne Museum here in the town is excellent. So I thought what I'll do, I'll take you on a little bit of a guided tour, point out some of my favourite things, and it's been a little while since I've been here as well, so I'm really excited to go and see what they've done, what's new. The last time I visited was maybe 10 years ago, so I'm really excited to go and check this out. So come on, let's go and take a look at it. When you come to the museum, there's a few exhibits outside. You've got the M4 Sherman painted up in the 746 tank battalion markings of C Company. They were attached to the 82nd Airborne for a few weeks after D-Day. Behind me is the glider hall, so that's got a mock-up of a CG-4A Waco Glider in there. The big hall behind me there is the Operation Neptune one. And then the one to the front is all about the C-47. So I think what we'll do, we'll take a walk through the C-47 hall first, check that out, as that's really new and I have no idea what's in there. So let's go take a look. So this is the C-47 hall on the inside, and it is incredible. I've not been in here before, this is the first time. And as soon as you walk in here, you're met with an original C-47 marked up, done so for the D-Day drop, and it looks incredible. There's also a load of mannequins with all the correct paratrooper gear on, the M42 jumpsuits, T5 chutes, and you can even see some of them are strung up from the ceiling there. And you've got one playing original footage of the US Army paratroops during their training stateside in 1942. So it's got some great artifacts in here. Paratrooper jump boots, the iconic ones, really familiar with those from Band of Brothers, but what you might not know is about this guy, William Yarborough. He was the guy who came up with a lot of equipment and designed a lot of the uniforms for the US Airborne during World War II. And let's go and take a look at one of those early examples now. Right, this is really cool. This is the M41 jumpsuit. So this was the predecessor to the M42. And you can see some of the traits that Yarborough put into the uniform, the slanted pockets with the popper fasteners, and then the pockets on the trousers as well. And it's from this uniform that we owe the development of the M42 uniform that we can see this paratrooper wearing here. It's a bit hard with his harness on and all his web gear, but if you check out those pockets there, and you can just about see the pockets underneath his reserve chute there. That's the genesis of most modern combat uniforms that were in use up until the mid-2000s, and then Crye Precision sort of became the more standard type design. But this really was the genesis back in 1942, all from one very, very gifted inventor, William Yarborough. So behind me here we've got a really, really good display of the US Pathfinders, specifically the 82nd. Now these guys left from North Witham on D-Day, and that's in the Midlands in the United Kingdom. But we can see here, the trait with the 82nd Pathfinders, based on their previous jump experience, was to camouflage their jumpsuits with green paint. And you can see that on his equipment as well. And then here, this is the equipment that they would have used to mark the drop zones for the lead aircraft coming in to drop zones N, O and T, which were the 82nd Airborne drop zones. So we've got the Eureka beacons and the different signal lamps, as well as marker panels. Amazing to see that equipment. It's great being able to get so close to a C-47 like this as well. One really cool detail is this bit right here. And that was the tow link. If they were going to tow gliders, that's where the glider would hook up to on the aircraft and then be towed across the channel or to wherever. And then it would be released from there, land on its landing zone, and hopefully manage to deliver everybody intact and alive. And this is a great scene here. Here we've got guys from HQ 506 boarding their C-47 from the 439th Troop Carrier Group. and you can see just how much equipment and gear they were carrying and then trying to help each other up onto the aircraft. And also as well, if you can see inside the aircraft, you get a really good idea of being a tail dragger. It's got that little tail wheel there, so it drags it along the ground before it takes off. Just what a high angle it's canted up at. So you can imagine trying to walk, if you were the last in the stick, trying to get to the front of the aircraft with all of that equipment on. So this part of the museum is all about the German side of it and the German equipment used. But what is really interesting, there's a small plaque there about Wilhelm Falle, the commanding officer of the 91st Luftland Division. And obviously we all know he was killed on the morning of D-Day by Malcolm Brannan. But if you want to see more of that video, go check out one that I filmed here in Normandy last year from the location and go through all the events, so check that out. It's great. We've got uniforms representing the 91st Luftland Division, the 91st Air Landing Division, as well as from the German Fallschirmjäger, the paratroops, and the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment under Colonel von der Heydt were attached to the 91st for the Normandy defensive plan. This display is really good. Details all of the equipment that a paratrooper would have taken into Normandy. It says T5 main chute, the reserve that would be strapped to the chest, and then A4 aerial delivery container. That would have housed ammunition, rations, medical supplies, all sorts. Everything needed for the paratroopers to survive in combat for a few days before the seaborne elements could get to them. So the other items that they would need, B4 life preserver, and then the different weapons, the Thompson, M1 carbine, and the well-known M1 Garand rifle. The M1 helmet, well sorry, actually this is an M2. I'll try and get under here. You can see here it's got the harness attached to the helmet liner, and that was designed so they could wear the chin cup underneath so they could actually secure properly to the paratrooper making their exit from the aircraft. Typically though, as soon as the jump was over, they would either tuck the chin cup up under the liner or just get rid of it completely because it served no more useful purpose. And here you've got your canteen, your canteen cup, standard knife, fork and spoon, and then your mess kit as well. But they wouldn't really need any of that because of the first few days of combat, they would have 3 days supplies worth of K rations, and that's what you can see here. So anybody who's been in the military will be familiar with eating food out of a box or a wrapper, or if you like camping as well. But this was the forerunner of what we see today in the armed forces. This was what they took to war with them. The outer box is the pale one, and then the inner was waxed, so it was waterproof. And they could then use that for a variety of other things, just to store personal effects in or whatever else they needed to after they'd used it. The food was pretty good, but I think you would soon get tired of eating it. This is a really cool part of the display as well. You've got an A5 drop container here, and it's got the signal lamp on it that you would use to be able to locate it. And these were held in racks underneath the C-47s, and as soon as the green light was given by the jump master and the pilot over the drop zone, these would also be released so that hopefully, if everything worked out, the paratroopers would have extra equipment such as machine guns, machine gun ammo, mortars, mortar ammunition, and a whole range of other gear that they would need when going into combat on D-Day. Right, so after the C-47 hall, now I'm going to go to the Operation Neptune hall, and this is the hall that kind of recounts the D-Day operation, the invasion phase of D-Day, specifically looking at the airborne forces. So let's go. So this is really cool. As soon as you come in, we've got a T5 chute laid out with its risers. And you can get an idea of just how long the parachute is, and then you've got the canopy there and its camouflage material. And you'd often see paratroopers cut these up after the jump and then use them as a scarf because they were silk and it was really comfortable to wear. And now we're going to go on a C-47 as we jump into Normandy. Paratroopers lined up on the inside of the aircraft from the 82nd, all waiting to jump. Hear the roar of those big Pratt & Whitney engines. Stepping out, see the other serials flying in the V/Vs, dropping their paratroopers over the drop zones, hopefully. Sainte Me glise just down there. It is a little hard to see in here, the lighting is pretty dark, and unfortunately my GoPro, which I'm having to film this on, isn't the best in low light conditions, but this is a really good museum and shows perfectly how difficult the Bocage countryside was to operate through. So these are some really good dioramas. This is all the fight around the marshes and Lafayette. 57mm anti-tank gun there, as used at Lafayette to knock out some of the tanks. And then glider riders from the 325th bringing an A4 equipment bundle across the marshes. So this has to be one of my most favourite vehicles of the Second World War, Kettenkrad, and used a lot by both the Americans and the Germans, but first of all the Germans had to pass them on to the Americans. So this is a recreation here of the tank action at Lafayette on the afternoon of 6th of June, representing the bazooka team of Peterson and Heim on the left-hand side of the Lafayette Causeway. And there is one of the destroyed R-35 Renault tanks. So as the German armour started rolling across the causeway, Peterson and Heim on the left-hand side, Balderson and Print on the right-hand side both sprung into action. They got out of their foxholes, came over the bridge and to about these positions here. As the first German tank approached the bridge, the tank commander halted the tank and made the fatal error of opening his hatch and getting out. At that point, he was cut down with a burst of machine gun fire from one of the 30 caliber gunners located on the other side of the Mer de Ray. At this point, they went to work. They started firing rocket after rocket into the advancing German tanks. Now, some of this was aided by the big 57mm gun that was on top of the hill, but realistically, it was the two bazooka teams that managed to stop the tank advance here at the bridge. The first tank was stopped just roughly where that metal sign is, and then the other tanks further down. The rate of fire from the bazooka gunners, and that combined with a small arms fire from the paratroopers dug in back where the memorial is located today, that was enough to halt the German attack and to push them back across the causeway. Now, for their actions on the 6th of June 1944, Peterson, Heim, Balderson and Prynne were all awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Coming around, we've got more dioramas. A couple of German Fallschirmjäger here, man in a MG42 position and a mortar. These are really, really well done. More dioramas here of the 82nd Airborne in action here at Lafayette. 30 cal MG there. And one of the operators there on his SCR 300 radio. There's a great tribute here to the men of the 9th Army Air Force and their work as artillery spotters. An L4 Cub hanging from the ceiling there. These guys were invaluable to the Allies. They were able to act as forward airborne observers, work out the positions of the enemy, and then call down artillery fire on them. Right, and this is a really interesting room. This is the Ronald Reagan Conference Center, but it's just off the Operation Neptune building. And in here they've got examples of airborne uniform and equipment from all of the nationalities that fought in Western Europe. So we've got the early British ones, the sort used at the Bruneval raid in February 1942. And the British paratroopers, Canadians, Fallschirmjäger, as well as Italian paratroopers. It really does show the great variety of equipment used, but you can also see from the Germans being the first real users of airborne forces. I'm not really counting the Soviets because looking more in Western Europe, but looking at their bone sacks as they were known, and then you can see how the British copied them initially until they developed their own Denison smock, but you can see it here in the ones worn for the Bruneval raid. And this one here, very, very similar design to that of the Germans to begin with, before the advent of the classic British Airborne Denison smock here. The airborne bicycle there, folding bicycle. And then the projector infantry anti-tank, or projectile infantry anti-tank, sorry. The PIAT, absolutely horrendous spigot mortar weapon, really difficult to recock, not as good as the German and American anti-tank weapons, but still did enough to do the job. And this British paratrooper here, you've got your Mark V Sten collapsed under his X-type harness, the X-type parachute harness, along with a toggle rope there, and his map of the British airborne drop zones. What's also really interesting is he's got his over smock on that he would jump with, and that would just be used just to contain all his web gear and just bring it all into the body, and then that would be ditched on the drop zone after landing. And then for those who have ever seen a TV series called Band of Brothers and ever wondered what the leg bag looked like, this was the British leg bag. You can see it attaches there onto the harness. You can see it just below the map. Now these get a bad rep, but it was only because they were given to the 101st at the last minute before D-Day, whereas the Brits had trained with them and had a much better understanding of how to use them, how to not overload them, and to how to jump with them. And then here the classic American M42 jumpsuits, as used by all American airborne during World War II. There's a reserve chute from a T5 belonging to the 506 Regiment. And the way we can tell that, it's got RS stenciled on it, and each unit in the 101st stenciled the names of their initials, sorry, of their commanding officers, so RS for Robert Sink. Right, so I hope you enjoyed the Operation Neptune Hall. We're now going to go into the CG-4A Waco Hall. This is the American glider. We'll go and check it out and see what they have in here. So straight away stepping in here, you can just see this building has been built all around a CG-4A and you really get an idea of the scale of them. And you can also get a really good idea of just how flimsy these things in reality were. Tubular metal frame with wood as well. All these guys in here. And before Normandy, the US glidermen didn't receive any extra pay, unlike the paratroopers who got their extra $50 a month danger pay for jumping out of planes. But after Normandy and the casualties suffered, and when they finally saw just how much the glider troops had to go through to jump into combat, they then started receiving extra pay after that. Although I'm not sure, to be honest, if it would be worth it getting in one of these. You can see as well by looking in the cockpit just how rudimentary the controls were. And if you've seen Saving Private Ryan, you'll come across a scene where you see the crashed Waco glider. It was one of these. This is what it looked like before it had smashed into the hedge. That's based on a true story, and if you want to know more about it, you can see that in one of my other videos, all about how the Deputy Commanding General, of the 101st Airborne was killed on D-Day in one of these. And these are some great photos. This is what I was saying about the 101st and the 82nd glider riders as they came in, not receiving the extra pay before Normandy, but then receiving it after. It really brings home to you the human cost and just how brave these men were to arrive into battle in these untested vehicles. Also in here, this is what I really like about these World War II museums, is when you can come in here and they've got relics that they've recovered from the local area. You know, to think the last time these were handled before they were dug up was by the guys using them for real in combat. And I always wonder what the stories are attached to each item. You know, how did it get in the ground, and how did it end up there, and you know, what happened to the original owner or the guy who was operating it. And now we've got a baseball jersey from the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, which is really cool, very unique. So here we've got just the standard equipment GI would be very familiar with: an M1 cartridge belt, your M1 bayonet for the Garand, M36 musette bag, and then this is really cool. This is a B4 life preserver, but this was from a member of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, as it's got the lightning bolt and the G for Geronimo, which was their regimental motto. Here's more web equipment, and interestingly a camouflaged M36 musette pack, which is really cool to see. Equipment used by the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment. The 327th were the Glider Infantry Regiment that were part of the 101st Airborne. It was the 325th that were part of the 82nd Airborne. Now this equipment here is of particular interest to me. This is your engineers' equipment that would have been used to detect for mines, and then a variety of the German mines that they used. And one of them in particular that always interests me is this one here, the glass mine. So absolutely minimal amount of metal involved, if any at all, in some of the more internal components, but yeah, very hard, if detectable at all, by metal detectors. Different types of rifle grenades, anti-tank grenades, demolitions equipment, and then some very, very impressive fighting knives and machetes. A lot of them as well derived from America's experiences in the trenches of World War I and then coming forward into World War II. Right, so I hope you've enjoyed this episode of WW2 Wayfinder and my tour around the Airborne Museum here at Sainte Me. If you do come to Sainte Me, this is absolutely one that you need to put on your list of must-dos while you're here. It's so good, and it's improved so much since my last visit as well, and back then it was really good. So it's great to see it go from strength to strength. I'll see you all in the next one.